All right, Bulls and Bears, BX4 News, Ride the Bull, Prepare for the Bear, back in the building. Let's go ahead and get into it, Bulls and Bears. We're in a economic environment right now like we've never seen in history. And we're talking about the gears had a monkey wrench thrown in them with all these cuts, all these layoffs at the federal level. And we're going to see how this unfolds together, folks. But it's going to be painful for some. It's going to be beneficial for others. And we'll talk about, we'll kind of dissect what that means here to different people. Probably a lot of people viewing this right now here later in this video. But what do we see here going on? We see talks of how much money we're saving and the cuts, but yet all the programs that were around previously are still here, and all the methods of keeping things operational are still here. Nothing's being cut from that standpoint. I'm talking about, let's talk about the debt ceiling just got increased. So if we're cutting so much, why are we still increasing the debt ceiling? Another spending package was just passed recently. If we're cutting so much, why do we still need to have all these spending packages, right? The national debt's still going crazy, still going up, even at a faster pace than previously. Just to be accurate, 36,635,516,000,000 and some change. Hasn't slowed down. In fact, it looks like it even sped up somewhat. So national debt's still exploding. Where are the cuts, and how are people actually going to see the benefit from this? They're still talking about the DOGE checks, stimulus checks, whatever you want to call them, for the money that they're saving. So if we're saving money, why is the system still expanding, the debt still expanding? Everything's still the same. We're still passing spending bills. We're still raising the debt ceiling. So is it a big scam, folks? That's what I'm starting to think here. And there's a lot of people excited about this. But is it doing more harm than good, right? Maybe we should just keep on running up debt at exponential levels and let inflation run out of control. Why even try to bring prices down, right? Because then as soon as you bring prices down or attempt to, then you see all this fallout because of the job cuts and the things that go along with bringing prices down, folks. And there's many other ways they can bring prices down, many other ways. All you have to do is stop the billionaires from buying real estate. That would bring the cost of housing down, which is the number one expenditure for most people. So if you really wanted to help people, that's where you could start. But of course, no. Because why? Because it's the multi-billionaires that actually are running things. They're making all these decisions, folks. So if you think it's going to get better for the working class, for the middle class, I wouldn't hold your breath on it, folks. That's why it's very, very important to invest. Try to stay ahead of the financial curve here. Maybe this news helps you. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it stresses you out, right? But at least think about, keeping an eye on this stuff. And, some people say it's all for nothing and they'd rather just not pay attention and watch sports. And I can see why. I can see why. People aren't as stressed out when they don't think about reality, right? They don't want to think about economic reality. And just watch sports, just watch movies, entertainment, laugh. Nothing wrong with that. I have fun and laugh when I'm not. Sometimes I even laugh in these videos, but when I'm not doing these videos, I laugh in the real world. I think things are funny. I go to see comedy shows. I joke around with friends. Don't let the stuff get you down. I mean, as soon as you start letting it get you down, then it's time to just check out. And maybe that's the case. Maybe this stuff stresses people out. To me, I get stressed out not knowing this stuff because I like knowing what's going to happen. And right now, it's a very tough time to call and say what's going to happen. There's a crystal ball back there. Not really. It's a fake crystal ball. Bought off Amazon. It changes colors. It's not really a crystal ball. It's just kind of a joke as to trying to predict what's happening in the economy and the economic forecast, as some people would call it. But that's how you prepare, folks. You try to see what's happening, the trends. To me, it looks like cost of living going higher, more inflation. For those looking to buy a home that can't afford it, maybe look to a different location. In just a few minutes here, we're going to talk about the most affordable places to live, and the fastest growing city for home prices is over in the Rust Belt, over in the Midwest area. We're going to talk about that when we get into the housing information later today. But first of all, back to the whole cutting the spending situation. And here's something that's being touted by the current administration. And this is out there out of a lot of different outlets. Investing.com is where I'm reading this right now. Howard Lutnick, he says he's selling these gold cards for people to come to the U.S. and 1,000 of them in one day. That's $5 billion in one day. So 1,000 times 5 million. Yeah. So they're selling them for 5 million each. At 1,000 a day, that's $5 billion with a B per day. And by the way, he said he sold 1,000 the day prior. So it's 2,000. So that's $10 billion in 2 days. The concept of the gold card program, previously discussed by Lutnick as a potential solution to pay off the U.S. national debt. He suggested that a sale of 200,000 of these gold cards could contribute towards reducing the national debt. Well, we just talked about that. The debt's still running up like never before. And here's the big joke about this here. $5 billion a day seems like a lot. Two jokes, actually. There's two big flaws in this. Eventually, you're going to run out of multimillionaires that want to come to the U.S. and pay this type of money. That's one. Two, even if these multi-billionaires never ran out, let's say there was an endless supply of multi-billionaires across the world that want to pay $5 million to get this gold card to come to the U.S. and then be granted legal status. Let's say there was an endless supply, kind of like the money supply. They could just print endless multi-millionaires to buy these gold cards. Endless. Would that actually fix things? No, because $5 billion a day doesn't even match what we're running up daily. We're running up $5.3 billion a day. So we're not even keeping up with the spending with this gold card program, which is not going to be lasting very long because eventually you're going to run out of people that have that kind of money and want to come to the U.S. You see what I'm seeing here, folks? So the numbers don't add up. Something fishy's going on. Something smells in the woods. And sounds like or seems like there's a cesspool somewhere of lies, and I think we're being deceived big time. But again, this could be used as a way to finally implode this economy, and that'll be the cover story as well. We're trying to cut spending, and we've got all these people out there losing their jobs, and things are going to change drastically. I think by the end of 2025, this would be the year of the biggest change we've ever seen, I think, in my lifetime. And some people ask how old I am. I don't want to give away my real age. I'm closer to 40 than I am to 30. So I've been around for a little while. I know I look a lot older the last few years. I have some health problems that really won't get into. That's not why you're here. But I aged a lot over the past few years. Some people even let me know down in the comments how much older I look. But yeah, anyways, in my years on this earth, I think we're going to see this year. I think it's going to be probably for most of you too, the biggest year of change that we've ever seen. And how to prepare for it, nobody really knows exactly, but in times of uncertainty, there are some things you can do. You can cut back the spending. Most people aren't doing that. Most people are spending more and more and more. The debt's still climbing. And people just think they're always going to get some get out of jail free card. Look at all the banks that failed. What was the exact number? Was it 5 in 2023, including the Silicon Valley Bank? The FDIC, we knew even before that, only had like 1% of the funds available to cover all the deposits in all the different banks. In case all the banks imploded at once, they only had 1%. They can only cover 1% of the depositors. So they didn't even have enough to cover the few banks that failed, so they had to come in with the Fed, with the Treasury, create the money, add it to the debt in order to give the people back their money that would have lost their money. But the FDIC is still around, even though they're pretty much irrelevant. They're still around. They're not being, well, maybe they're being cut. I have to read the latest news here, but let's get into some other stuff here today, folks. And actually, I just checked on something. I spoke too soon. I said, why aren't they cutting it? Job cuts at FDIC are raising alarms. FDIC grappling with attrition, unresolved workplace issues. FDIC fires new employees as part of broader cuts. 500 employees. Wow, that was back in February. So we're seeing cuts across the board. It's so many I can't even keep up with. But speaking of that, you do have some agencies, some departments that don't seem like they're even relevant. Again, why do we have to come in and borrow or print the money when banks fail? Because FDIC doesn't have enough to cover it. So then what's FDIC for then? Is it just a program to give people confidence? Right? They have to put a name to it. So they say federally insured funds for your bank in the bank. You're insured, right? So they have to have this program out there, I think, to give people confidence in the banking system, even though the program that gives them confidence barely covers 1% of all the deposits. So if you see a wider bank run, or a string of bank failures, they're just going to have to come in and borrow the money and add it to the national debt anyways. What a scam, folks. But let's get down to some other news here. And by the way, let me know what you think down in the comments about any of this. The gold card, the national debt still increasing faster than $5 billion a day that we're getting from these gold cards. Financial Times, folks. China says it's ready for a financial shock because of these tariffs here. And we saw what happened in China just last month. China's cutting rates. They made it easier to borrow money to keep the economy growing. And you know, if you've been on this channel, that running up debt, consumers running up debt is most of what's chalked up as economic growth. China said it was ready for unexpected shocks ahead of the current administration imposing tariffs on the world's second biggest economy and rival superpower. Yes, the U.S. is still the largest economy in the world. And again, because we have unlimited money borrowing and money printing capabilities. So, of course, we're the world's largest economy. But when the debt stops, folks, the economy drops. This is all propped up on spending, and mostly spending money we don't have, borrowing at every level, federal level, again, consumer level, corporate America level, all borrowed money, folks. The prices that we're seeing right now, if it weren't for the endless borrowing money capabilities, we would see the cost of living drop by at least, I think, 90%, just everything in broad compilation of everything. Housing down 70, 80%. Groceries down, who knows, 50, 60%. A lot of things would just crash if you stopped all the money creation, folks. And there's been talk about going back to a sound currency like we had pre-1971, where you couldn't just create endless amounts of money. And we haven't seen it. In fact, we've seen backlash against it recently. Have you guys seen this? The BRICS nations that we're talking about coming out against the U.S. dollar, or finding the alternative to the U.S. dollar, or trading outside the U.S. dollar. Take a look at this, folks. Well, I actually won't bring up this article, but it's been written about a lot, even Reuters. Basically, we're threatening the BRICS nations with the 100% tariffs if they go outside of the U.S. dollar. So it doesn't look like any backed currency or asset-backed currency is going to be here if this continues. And 100% tariffs, I mean, who's going to actually implement that and get 100% tariffs placed on them? It's a basically doubling of the price. But one thing we have to try to sort out and talk about is the fact that gold's exploding, folks, and the biggest buyer of gold is central banks and governments across the world. So if we were not going to go outside the dollar or go back to something asset-backed, right, or a gold-backed currency, if you want to call it that, then why do we see the central banks and governments buying up so much gold? What is the reason, right? So if it was about the dollar or fiat currency in general, why wouldn't they just buy pallets full of fiat dollars, full of paper money, right? So you got to think about that as well. Maybe we're being deceived with this whole anti-BRICS thing as well. Maybe that's a whole facade to make people think that the U.S. dollar is going to be sticking around, folks. So it's a lot to ingest. I know it's a lot to unravel. So that's why I always like to read your comments. And I've learned from a lot of your comments here on this channel, by the way. And who am I? I'm not a financial expert. I've been in finance now for 15 years. That's what I do full time. Have my own business involved in finance. I still work for a regular employer too, for health benefits mainly. Also, I'm very busy on top of doing these videos, doing a lot of research. Do I know everything? No, but we've been pretty accurate. We were one of the only channels to tell you that inflation was going to keep rising and that the housing bubble wasn't going to bust. Even back in 2020, numerous channels said this housing bubble's done, it's going to go bust. And what did? They came in, they put a floor under the housing market, they stopped foreclosures. We would have seen in 2020 a housing bust twice as bad as 2008, but they put a floor under it. And why do I say that? Because the number of people that needed mortgage forbearance because they lost their job, because of the health crisis, all that, it was double the number of foreclosures that we saw in 2008, 9, and 10. So that tells you right there, probably would have been twice as bad, maybe even worse, because of the snowball effect. But they came in, they put a floor under it. They loosened lending standards, made it very easy for the banks to loan out money. The banks don't actually have to have any money now in order to loan it out. That's unprecedented ever since 2020. And that emergency measure is still in place today, folks. We're still under emergency financial procedures right now here in 2025 ever since 2020. So again, if things are being cut, if spending's being cut, why do we see all this happening, right? The debt exploding still under emergency measures. The things we know that can be done to really help people are not being done. Again, it looks like a big scam, but let me know what you think about this down in the comments. Let's move on, folks. Lots of other news to get into. I'm digressing a little bit here on some of this. Talk about the biggest expense for most people, real estate, housing. And the city that's increasing the most, where people are flocking to, is a Midwest city, and it is Milwaukee and the greater Milwaukee area. And they have the fastest rising home prices in America. And that is still a very affordable place compared to the rest of the country. But you also have other cities where it's being reported here are still very affordable. And San Francisco Gate, SF Gate, came out with the list of top 10 cities for Gen Z to afford to buy a home. And it's not just these cities, it's these cities plus the entire surrounding area and a lot of the entire state, for example. But Des Moines, Iowa, number 1, $267,000 median home price. Omaha, Nebraska, $274,000. A lot of cornfields, folks. Iowa and Nebraska. Youngstown, Ohio, $136,000. Wow, that's really affordable there. Dayton, Ohio, $183,000. Grand Rapids, Michigan, $230,000. Yeah, $230,000. Little Rock, Arkansas, $196,000 median home price. Birmingham, Alabama, $185,000 median home price. Cincinnati, Ohio, $255,000. Jackson, Mississippi, $274,000. Wichita, Kansas, $224,000. More cornfields. I grew up around cornfields, folks. I grew up on a farm in Southwest Michigan, and now I'm in San Diego. So drastic lifestyle change from the way I grew up out here, that's for sure. But there is a lot of farming in California, especially Northern California with the grapes, and we are the state that produces most of the food, or we produce more food than any other state, even all these Midwest states with all the corn production. A lot of that's so just because California is such a big state, but the climate does allow, the California climate does allow for a growing season to be a lot longer than a lot of other states too, so that's another thing too. But speaking of California, we have the lowest level of people owning homes here. It's about 50%. Let me bring up a picture here, an image here. And this is home ownership by state. And the lightest color out here, California, is 55% California. And we see some of the other expensive states are even better than California. 64% of people in Alaska own their home. Hawaii, 61%. Here's Michigan, a lot of homeowners up in Michigan. A lot of people own their home, 71%. Pennsylvania, same thing, 71%. So basically, this is another way to see where are the affordable places to live. Because if more people own their homes, then obviously it's probably more affordable. Maine, 75%. The southern states, Mississippi, 75%. Alabama, 73%. Georgia, 65%. The other lower home ownership, of course, New York, only 53. Oh, actually, that's the lowest state, 53, because California is 55, so I almost missed that. And so, wow, only 53%, a little over one half of people in New York own their homes. Crazy. Texas, 63%. Nevada, 61%. So where's your state? What do you think about it? Indiana, 73%, a lot of home ownership there. The Rust Belt. Wisconsin, almost 70%. So there you go, folks. You could still afford a home in these states, especially Ohio. Those prices are really low, and a lot of the cornfield states as well. Now, moving on here, something that's been in the news lately, a lot of YouTubers are talking about it, just a lot of news outlets in general, is this DoorDash and this buy now, pay later option for food deliveries. And people are asking, you've got to finance your food, you've got to buy now and pay that later. So it's in the news. It's, very popular, kind of trending talking point. Buy now, pay later apps are coming for your takeout order. DoorDash offering payment plans for food delivery sparks backlash. On one hand, financing fast food blended capital in the race to 2030. On one hand, you think it's pretty sad that people have to finance their food. But on the other hand, is it much different than just putting it on a credit card? Essentially, you're financing it on a credit card, and more people now are not paying off their card in full each month. So then you're carrying those interest charges. And that's why we're still seeing debt explode, folks, as people can't pay off their credit cards and banks are still loaning out money. So it looks like the economy is still growing, but with all the monkey wrenches happening in the economy, what's the best way to prepare? I still say hard assets, folks. Even though they put this out there that we're threatening these nations for wanting to go back to a hard asset or asset-backed currency, I think it could be a big deception because we still see who's buying the gold, folks. The central banks and billionaires across the world, governments, etc. So that's how I'm still looking at this, folks. Still stacking as always. Keep stacking and let me know what you think down in comments. A couple good comments though recently read here. Just wanted to go over a couple of these, and there's so many good comments I can't possibly go through all of them. But here's some advice from Deidre 4391. 3 things that break budgets: eating out, clothes, and cars. Absolutely agree with that. James 2937 says, are we great again yet? Yeah, good question. With the debt still exploding, even with all the cuts happening right now, debt ceiling still being increased, spending bills still going through, folks. So something's not adding up, that's for sure. Here's one here. Richard Williams 1639. Commercial real estate is poised for a comeback. People really want to work in cubicles. We talked about that here a lot. Do people really want to go back to the office and sit in a cubicle? And these companies that are calling people back to the office, are they trying to save commercial property values by having people come back to the office? On one hand, we're being told we need to cut all this fuel usage of fuel and go to electric cars, so less traffic, less pollution. But yet, instead of letting people not have to commute back and forth to work, letting them work at home, a lot of these companies are calling people back to the office, right? So another thing that just doesn't add up, doesn't make any sense, does it? Tariffs will bury the U.S., kill businesses, and cost jobs. So there's that. That's JBerg17. A lot of you that I read comments, I would love to sit down and talk to you if I had the time, folks. But I'm busy. You're probably busy. And most people don't even have time to even think about this stuff. They just want to be entertained. I get it. But thanks for being here, folks. Hopefully I'm not as entertaining as some people, but for this type of news, I try to make it as interesting as possible. Try to dig down to the real source of the problems and the solutions here, as well as cover the news daily. Please make sure you're subscribed. Help this channel stay alive, folks. Thanks for being here. As always, keep stacking. Bye for now. Peace.